Okay, now we are looking at Upper Intermediate English, Headway Upper Intermediate English, and Unit 3. This is the student's book, page 27. Directly below language focus, you see practice, discussing grammar, and we're looking at exercise 1. So the directions say, page 27, exercise 1, compare the use of tenses in these sentences. Say which tense is used and why. Now, I think these instructions could be a little bit confusing, so let's pay careful attention to them. It says, say which tense is used and why, but note, all tenses in the sentences are correct, but they have different meanings. So each of these examples has either 2 possibilities or 3 possibilities of different sentences with different verb forms. All of the sentences are correct, but they all have different meanings also. So let's pay careful attention. Number 1, right? I read a book on the plane. If you see this sentence, it's very likely to be past simple. I read a book on the plane. So, for example, a friend of mine gets back from a trip. He's gone on a vacation to another country, and so he's flown back and I say, hey, how was your trip? He says, oh, it was nice. You know, the flight was good. I read a book on the plane. Right? Started in the past, ended in the past. So we use the past simple. Right? It's finished. It's done. Now, look at the second sentence. I was reading a book on the plane. Past simple? No, we have was reading, past continuous. So this is describing an action that was in progress. Now, when you see a sentence like this, it probably comes in the context of other related sentences. So maybe he's telling me a story about something that happened on the plane. He says, well, I was reading a book on the plane. I really like to read, and it was going to be a 4-hour flight. So I was reading a book on the plane, but then a baby started crying, and it was really loud, and it wouldn't stop crying, so I wasn't able to finish reading the book. Right? This is incomplete action in past. Or I was reading a book on the plane, and the man next to me started asking me questions. I was reading a book on the plane, and they stopped to ask me if I wanted chicken or fish. Right? I said I wanted fish, and then they said, sorry, we don't have any more fish, we have chicken. Right? The story keeps going in some way. I was reading. This is for action in progress in the past. How about number 2? We have this opening clause, when Alice arrived. Of course, arrived is just past simple. This word when is showing us that we're talking about something else at that point in time. When Alice arrived, I made a cake. Past simple in the first clause, and I made, also past simple in the second clause. So this means that Alice arrived, and immediately after that, or very shortly after that, I said, time for me to make a cake. And I made a cake. Right? First she arrived, then I made a cake. The next sentence says, when Alice arrived, I was making a cake. Again, past continuous for action in progress. So this means, what happened first? Well, first I started making a cake, and then Alice arrived, and then, we don't know, but probably, I continued making the cake. Right? So she arrived after I started making the cake, but before I finished making the cake. Action in progress. The third option, third sentence. When Alice arrived, I had made a cake. Here we have past Here we have past perfect. I had made a cake. Now, what happened in this sentence? Well, first, I started making the cake, and then I finished making the cake, and then Alice arrived. So when Alice walked in the door, I could say, hey Alice, take a look at this cake. Right? This is the idea. Number 3. We were going to see a movie, so we've got these options. The film started when we got to the cinema, or the film had started when we got to the cinema. Again, let's look at the first one first. We're using that conjunction when again. We have the film started and when we got to the cinema. So did we get to see all of the film? Yes, in this first sentence we did. The idea here is we got there just in time. We got to the cinema, bought our tickets, walked in, and then the film started. What about the second sentence? The film had started when we got to the cinema. Not fun when this happens, but it sounds like we were late to the movie, right? We arrived to see the movie. Maybe there was traffic, maybe somebody was running late, we had to wait for that person. But when we got to the cinema, the film had already started. Maybe we missed the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, something like that. Number 4, he was sacked because he had stolen some money. Sacked, what is this? This means he was fired, right? When they say no more, you can't work here anymore. This is sacked or fired. He was sacked because he had stolen some money. What happened? Well, this man stole some money, and then his boss must have learned about this. He found out, so he said, "You're fired." Right? Now, what about the second sentence? He was sacked because he had been stealing money for years. Wow, this is a different situation. The first one says he had stolen some money. It sounds like probably not a lot of money, and I can feel sorry for the guy in the first sentence. Why? Because it sounds like it only happened once, and I don't know, maybe he had an emergency, maybe he needed to help his mother because she was in the hospital and she needed medicine or something like that. I don't know. But look at the second one. In the first sentence we have had stolen, past perfect. The second sentence, had been stealing, continuous, past perfect continuous, for years. So this sounds like he stole money not just once or twice, lots of times, right? Maybe he started off just stealing 50 reals here, 100 reals there, and then pretty soon he was stealing thousands of reals every month, right? Maybe now he owes his employer 50,000 reals, 100,000 reals, a million reals. I don't know, but this is a bigger problem, right? Sounds like a bad guy, right? Because he'd been doing it over and over and over again. But past perfect simple, it happened maybe only once. It's not clear from the sentence, but probably only happened once. Began in the past of the past, ended in the past of the past. It's over. After it had happened, the boss found out, fired. This is a different one, the second sentence, right? He started stealing, and then he kept on stealing for a long time, and then his boss found out, right? So, the last example. When I got to the garage, my car was being repaired, right? So the idea is, I had problems with my car, so I took it to the garage. I took it to a mechanic, right? A mechanic works at a garage. And so I came back in the late afternoon for my car, and it wasn't ready yet. Maybe they said, okay, your car will be ready in 30 minutes, but please sit down. Sometimes you can wait there. Or maybe they said, I'm sorry, your car is not ready, but come back tomorrow. It was being repaired. This is past perfect. Excuse me. This is past continuous, passive. Was being repaired. Past continuous, passive. We have the verb to be, was, and then the verb to be in ing, being. So that's past continuous. And then the past participle repair. Put those together. Was being repaired. Someone was repairing it at that moment, but they weren't finished yet, so I had to wait. Now, when I got to the garage, My car had been repaired. Right? So again, I got to the garage maybe in the late afternoon, and they said, here is your car, it's ready. Just like the cake, right? And again, this is also past perfect passive, had been repaired, as opposed to this one, which is past continuous passive, was being repaired. So I hope that helps.